57 Birr to the dollar at the official window, 90 plus Birr for that same dollar in Merkato on a folding table, in cash, no receipt. That gap sat there for years, printed in two different realities at once, until July 29th, 2024, when the National Bank of Ethiopia stopped defending the fiction and let the Birr fall to find its real price. In one motion, the currency lost roughly half its dollar value on paper. This is the story of why that gap existed, who built it, who profited from it, and who was left holding the bill when it finally closed. Before the float, Ethiopia was running two economies stitched together by a single exchange rate that almost nobody actually used. The official rate, set and defended by the National Bank of Ethiopia, hovered in the mid-50s per dollar. But walk into Merkato, Addis Ababa's sprawling open-air market, and traders were quoting 80, 90, sometimes over 100 Birr for that same dollar, depending on the week. That was not a rumor or an estimate. It was a functioning, visible, daily price discovery mechanism operating in plain sight, tolerated because the state could not actually supply enough hard currency to make its own official rate mean anything. Importers seeking dollars through legal channels routinely waited months for an allocation from the National Bank of Ethiopia, pharmaceutical companies, fuel importers, manufacturers needing spare parts, all stuck in a queue for a resource the bank did not have enough of. Foreign reserves had shrunk to levels covering only a matter of weeks of imports, nowhere near the standard cushion of 3 months that institutions like the International Monetary Fund treat as a baseline of stability. Inflation, meanwhile, had been running in the double digits for years, at times exceeding 30% annually, driven in part by the exact same dollar shortage that was starving importers. Ethiopia had also been sitting in external debt distress, unable to service some of its obligations on schedule, which meant its options for raising fresh foreign financing through normal channels were narrowing every year the peg held. So, the mechanism that had propped up the old rate was not subtle. The National Bank of Ethiopia maintained the peg through direct administrative control. It rationed the dollars it did have to preferred sectors and preferred buyers. It imposed surrender requirements, forcing exporters to convert their foreign earnings into Birr at the official, below-market rate. And it treated large-scale parallel currency trading as something to be policed rather than acknowledged. Exporters earning dollars abroad were compelled to hand a share of that hard currency to the state at a price the state itself set, a price everyone involved knew was below what the market would actually pay. That is a transfer. The exporter takes the loss on that spread every single time a shipment clears customs and the proceeds get converted. Meanwhile, the actual market price, the one traders in Merkato were living off of, kept climbing further away from the official number because the shortage never went away. It just moved underground, where it was priced honestly by people with no institutional obligation to defend a fiction. Subscribe to see the next country's currency playbook before the headlines catch up. The turning point was not really a policy choice made in isolation. It was a debt trap that had run out of alternatives. By early 2024, Ethiopia's government needed access to a financing package tied to the International Monetary Fund, reportedly linked to roughly $10.7 billion in support alongside other multilateral and bilateral lenders to keep servicing its obligations and rebuild any credible reserve position at all. But that kind of program does not arrive without conditions. The IMF's standard prescription for a country running a large, persistent gap between an official and a parallel exchange rate is blunt. Stop defending the fake number. On July 29, 2024, the National Bank of Ethiopia announced it would move to a market-determined exchange rate regime, effectively floating the Birr and letting banks and the interbank market set the price instead of a central administrative order. This was only possible at that exact moment because the government had run out of road. Reserves were too thin to keep intervening. Debt distress had already been formally acknowledged, and continued access to fresh IMF-linked disbursement was contingent on making this specific move. In other words, the leverage did not come from persuasion. It came from Ethiopia needing the money more than it needed to keep the old peg alive. What happened next moved fast. The Birr, once fixed near 57 to the dollar, dropped to somewhere in the range of 100 to 120 within the initial weeks of the float, a devaluation of roughly half its official value in a single administrative event. Imported inflation spiked immediately. Fuel, medicine, machinery parts, all priced in dollars, all suddenly more expensive in Birr terms overnight. But here is the mechanism working as designed. The parallel market rate, the one Merkato traders had been quoting for years, did not move nearly as much because it was already close to where the new official rate landed. The spread that had defined Ethiopia's dual currency economy for the better part of a decade compressed sharply. Formal import channels, starved for years by rationing, began clearing dollar allocations again through the banking system instead of through backstreet cash deals. Was the black market actually shrinking or just losing its reason to exist? Once the legal price and the street price converged, the entire economic rationale for running currency through an unofficial trader evaporated because there was no longer a meaningful margin left to trade on. Now to the part that gets skipped in most retellings of currency reforms. Who actually paid for this? Birr-denominated savers, anyone holding cash or bank deposits in local currency, saw the real dollar-equivalent value of their savings cut by roughly half in the space of weeks. A straightforward transfer of purchasing power with no dramatic villain attached, just the mechanical consequence of devaluation landing on whoever was holding the currency being devalued. Import-reliant businesses and ordinary consumers absorbed an immediate cost of living shock, particularly on fuel and food, because Ethiopia imports a significant share of both, and those prices are set in dollars regardless of what the Birr is doing. And the parallel market currency traders, the men and women who had spent years running the Merkato exchange trade, quoting rates, moving cash, effectively performing the price discovery function the central bank refused to perform officially, had their entire business model compressed the moment the spread they lived on shrank. Their income was not seized. It was not banned into non-existence by decree. It was simply starved structurally because the arbitrage that funded it stopped being profitable once the official price stopped lying. Where does this stand now? The gap between the official and informal rate has narrowed significantly from its pre-float extremes, but it has not fully closed. Periodic reports since the float have shown a residual spread persisting, smaller but present. Reserve rebuilding has been gradual, not dramatic, and remains tied to the continued disbursement schedule under the IMF-backed program, which means the credibility of the new floating regime is still conditional, not self-sustaining. Ethiopia has not escaped debt distress. It has restructured its exposure to it, with the currency reform functioning as one lever among several tied to ongoing multilateral support. Any country sitting today on a large, unofficial gap between its stated exchange rate and the rate its own citizens actually trade at is looking at the same eventual choice Ethiopia faced. Forcing convergence does not make the underlying cost disappear. It just decides who pays it and moves that bill from the black market trader's margin directly onto the saver's balance and the consumer's grocery bill all at once on a single date, printed in the record.